Nothing disrupts daily routines quite like a winter storm. At their best, they're inconvenient. At their worst, they can be killers. Controlling the impact of winter storms is one of the most important jobs we do in highway maintenance. It saves money, it saves lives. This training course on snowplow and spreader operation is divided into 3 parts. Here in part 1, we'll take a look at the equipment we'll use in our demonstrations, and then go through the procedures for hooking up a snowplow and tailgate spreader to a dump truck. In part 2, we'll go over daily checks, inspecting and servicing the equipment before you take it out on the road. And in the 3rd program, we'll look at plowing and spreading techniques. But first, let's start with the basics and take a look at the equipment we'll be using in our demonstrations. This is a snowplow. Now, you just can't get more basic than that. But bear with me for a moment. I just want to cover some terms I'll be using throughout the program. The large face of the plow is the moldboard. It's the part that pushes the snow off the road. But it's really the plow blades that do most of the work. They extend below the moldboard and protect it from damage. Usually there are 2 layers of blades attached along the entire length of the moldboard. When you're plowing, the blades cut through the snow right down to the pavement. As a result, the blades wear down. The point is that blades are easily replaced. Moldboards are not. The frame of the plow is used to attach the plow to a mounting bracket on the front of a truck. The circular part of the frame is called the turntable. You can change the angle of the plow by removing the turntable pin and repositioning the plow to the desired angle. Finally, the deflector. It runs along the top of the plow and prevents snow from blowing back over the plow and obstructing your vision. The deflector also helps keep snow from blowing into the engine compartment, where it could cause problems with the air intake and ignition systems. Okay, now for the spreader. We're going to concentrate on tailgate spreaders in this program. They're mounted on the back of a dump truck before the snow season begins, and they're left on until the winter is over. To operate a tailgate spreader, it's necessary to raise the dump box so the material will slide out of the box and into the spreader. Inside the spreader is a screw conveyor or auger. When the auger is turning, it moves the material through the spreader and dumps it out of a chute on the bottom. You can regulate the amount of material dumped by the spreader by adjusting the speed of the auger with a control in the truck cab. On the control knob are numbered settings. The higher the setting, the faster the auger will turn. And the faster the auger turns, the more material will be discharged from the spreader. As the material falls out of the spreader, it lands on the spinner, which throws the material out over the road. You control the width of the spread by controlling the speed of the spinner. At the lower settings, the spinner turns slowly. As you increase the setting, the spinner turns more quickly and throws the material farther. We'll discuss the operation of the plow and spreader in more detail in part 3 of the course. For now, I just wanted to cover the equipment we'll be using and a few of its major parts. Now let's look at hooking up the plow and spreader. First, the plow. Start by lining up the truck with the plow, then, following the directions of your spotter, drive slowly straight at the center of the plow frame. If the plow has been stored on blocks, chances are the frame of the plow will line up pretty closely with the mounting bracket on the truck. When the plow and truck are lined up, hook the plow chain to the plow hoist. It's a good idea to mark the chain at the point where it will lift both ends of the plow up at the same time. If the chain's not marked, look for the length that shows some wear. That's probably where the chain was hooked up the last time. But of course, don't use any chain that is excessively worn. After you hook up the chain, take out the slack by raising the plow slightly with the plow lift control in the cab. Adjust the height of the plow until the holes on the plow's frame line up with the holes on the mounting bracket. Then slip a pin through the holes and secure the pin with a key to hold it in place. But be careful. If the plow or truck moves, you could lose a finger. Then secure the pin and key on the other side of the frame. Now let's look at changing the plow angle. Most often you'll push snow off to the right side of the road, so the plow must be angled to the right. But there will be times when it's necessary to push snow to the left, such as when you're plowing the left lane of the interstate. To do that, you have to change the plow angle. There are a couple of ways of changing the plowing angle. The first one we'll look at is the way you might do it if you were in the yard and had someone to help you. Start by raising the plow, then sliding a bar or pipe under it to make it easier to swing the plow over. Then lower the plow onto the pipe. Now you have to relieve some pressure from the plow hoist, so you'll be able to unhook the plow chain. After you get the chain off, you need to remove the plow turntable pin. This is the pin that holds the plow in position. The turntable frame has a number of holes in it to allow you to secure the plow in the desired angle. Once you get the pin out, you just have to push the plow over. In most cases, you'd push the plow over as far as it will go, either to the left or to the right. And when you get the plow in position, replace the turntable pin and hook up the plow chain. The second method of changing the plow angle is the way you might do it if you were alone and already out on your route. Again, you have to remove the turntable pin, but in this case, you need to remove the chain pin, not the chain itself. That will allow the chain to slide through the shackle as you reposition the plow. Next, you simply have to put the truck in reverse and back up, turning the steering wheel to the left. The plow will drag on the ground and shift over to the left as you back up. Then replace the turntable pin. If you're lucky, the hole for the pin will line up with the hole in the turntable, but it might take some adjusting to get the pin in. After you insert the pin, secure it with a key to hold it in place. And finally, secure the plow chain. Make sure it's adjusted so that when you raise the plow, both ends will lift up at the same time. One more point about this method of changing the plow angle. One of the first rules in truck driving is to avoid backing up. So if you're going to use this method, do it in a safe spot with plenty of room. Don't back up on the roadway or anywhere else where you could be a hazard to traffic. Now, mounting the spreader. You'll probably need to use a loader to lift the spreader and position it on the truck. Make sure the chain used to lift the spreader is secure. And don't walk under the spreader or the loader bucket until the spreader is secure. In fact, this operator should be wearing a hard hat because of the danger of the spreader breaking loose. All you have to do once you get the spreader in position is insert 2 long pins through the hinges on the sides of the spreader and the frame. It may take some jockeying to get the hinges lined up. Once you get the pins through the hinge, secure them with keys or bolts so they can't jiggle out. Then insert and tighten the bolts through the braces on the spreader's frame. Use a combination or socket wrench if you can. A crescent wrench could slip off and hit you if you're not careful. Once you get everything nice and tight, you can hook up the hydraulic lines. There are 2 of them on the spreader, one for the auger and one return line. The biggest concern here is to make sure the couplers on the ends of the lines are clean. No dirt, salt, or sand inside. You don't want anything running through those lines except hydraulic fluid. As you hook up the lines, make sure that you put the right line on the right fitting. If you put the wrong line on the fittings, the auger will run backward. And after you get the lines hooked up, make sure the couplers are securely fastened. If you have to use a hammer or another tool to lock the couplers together, do it gently so you don't bend or break the couplers. The next step is to attach the spinner to the spreader. Like the auger, the spinner has 2 hydraulic lines. It also has a stabilizer bar that keeps the spinner level as you raise and lower the dump box. The first thing to do is to attach the stabilizer bar to the nipple on the frame of the truck. Then secure the bar with a key or pin to hold it in place. Now you have to lift and secure the spinner. Hold the spinner in position under the mounting brackets. Then insert a pin through the brackets. After you get the spinner on, secure the pin so it stays put and the spinner stays on. Now you can hook up the spinner's lines. One goes to the auger motor on the spreader. The other goes to the fitting under the dump box. Again, wipe the couplers and the fittings clean before attaching the lines. And make sure the lines are hooked up correctly and securely. Finally, open the spreader lid and fasten it back so the material can slide out of the dump box and into the spreader. Remember that the chains on the truck's tailgate should be adjusted so that the tailgate opens wide enough to let the material fall through, but not so wide that the tailgate hits the spreader's lid. And that's it for hookup. As you can guess, the procedure for hooking up any particular spreader may be slightly different than what you've seen here, but keep these points in mind. First, every bolt or pin that you use to mount the spreader must be secured to keep it from coming loose. Second, tighten every nut and bolt and keep them tight. Be on the lookout for any piece that is showing wear. And third, remember to inspect and clean the hydraulic couplers before you secure them to the fittings. A little sand or salt in the lines may be all it takes to foul up the whole hydraulic system. Okay, you've got the plow mounted on the front and the spreader secured on the back. Are you ready to go? Not quite. Before you leave the yard, you have to perform a series of daily checks to make sure that when you do leave, you'll be out pushing snow and not broken down somewhere on the side of the road. We'll take a look at those checks and more in Part 2 of the program. In Part 1 of this series on snowplow and spreader operation, we went through the procedures for mounting a snowplow and a tailgate spreader to a dump truck. Now in Part 2, we'll look at daily checks, inspecting and servicing the equipment to make sure it's in good shape and properly serviced to do the job. As an equipment operator, you're well aware of how important daily maintenance is for keeping our equipment on the road and out of the repair shop. Conscientious daily maintenance can often prevent equipment breakdowns. Of course, on a nice summer day, a breakdown may mean only a little frustration and a long walk. But breakdown out here, and things can get a little scary. Most of the checks you make on your truck are nothing new to you. They're about the same as the checks you'd normally make, and those checks are covered in the tapes on dump truck operation. But for snow and ice removal, there are a few things you should pay special attention to. Like the tires. The weight of the plow and the spreader, not to mention the weight of the material in the dump box, will affect the tires. Make sure they're inflated to the recommended pressure and that the tread, sidewalls, and lug nuts are in good shape. Just work your way around the truck and try to spot signs of obvious or potential trouble. Leaks, loose or broken parts, anything that might lead to problems later on. Equipment breakdowns usually don't just happen. Most of the time, there are signs of trouble before they occur. A good operator is alert to those signs. Keep all lights and signs clear of snow and frost. Wipe them off before you leave and whenever they get covered. And make sure all of your lights are working. When you're out pushing snow, you need to see and to be seen. There are some more checks inside the cab. Check your heater and defroster. If they're not working well, the time you spend in the cab will be pure misery. And test your wipers and your windshield washer fluid. Fill up the reservoir if it's getting low. A streaky windshield is aggravating, and in a snowstorm, it's downright dangerous. Although it's not considered a daily check, maintaining an adequate supply of hydraulic fluid is critical to plowing and spreading operations. Low hydraulic fluid will slow down the spreader's auger and spinner, making it nearly impossible to regulate the application rate. To check the hydraulic fluid on this truck, it's necessary to raise the dump box and then lower it onto the safety props to prevent the box from falling. Notice how the operator is careful to brush away any loose snow from the tank before he opens it. Water and hydraulic fluid don't mix. Actually, on this truck, there are 2 tanks. The operator is checking the level in the tank that supplies fluid to the spreader. The other tank, directly behind the cab, holds the fluid for the truck's dump box. Again, it's not necessary to check the level every day. I just wanted to point out where the tanks are and the safe way to get to them. There are some things you need to check on the plow and spreader too. On the plow, check the bolts and pins that hold the plow onto the truck. Make sure they are secure and in good shape. Look for cracks or bends in the plow's frame. Also, check the pin in the plow turntable. It keeps the plow in position as you push through snow. If it breaks, the plow will swing freely from side to side. Look for worn or broken links on the plow chain, especially in the area where the chain is attached to the plow hoist. If the chain is getting worn, replace it. Also, check the condition of the springs or cushioning cylinder on the back of the plow. They let the plow trip or kick back when it hits a raised obstruction, such as a bridge expansion joint. Now, these springs are pretty sturdy, but they can be bent or broken if the plow hits a solid object. Other pins to check include those that hold the moldboard to the plow frame. Make sure each pin is secured and in good shape. Check the plow blades. They should extend below the moldboard. Remember, plow blades don't wear down evenly, so check the entire length of the blade. Replace any sections that are worn or broken. When you change blades on a plow, be sure to raise the plow and block it before you try to take the old blades off. If the lift chain breaks, or if the plow hoist loses pressure, the plow can fall with crushing force. Get someone to help you remove the old blades and to put on the new ones. Even the shorter sections of blades are heavy. And before you put the new blades on, inspect the blade bolts. If they're worn or damaged, replace them with bolts of the proper size and strength. Some plows are equipped with skids or shoes. The skids should be adjusted so that they carry the weight of the plow. You can adjust most skids by cranking them up or down until the blade of the plow just touches the ground. Finally, secure flags to both ends of the plow. They're not only required for traffic control, they also help you see where the edges of the plow are when you're in the cab. Replace any flags that are worn or faded. Now for the checks on the spreader. Start with lubrication. Always wipe each fitting clean to prevent forcing dirt, salt, or sand into the fitting. On this spreader, there are 2 points you should get, one for each auger inside the spreader. There might also be a fitting on the spinner shaft. Get them all. Salt and sand are murder on moving parts. After greasing, check around the hydraulic lines and couplings for leaks or improper hookup. Check the operation of the dump box, auger, and spinner. Here the operator is raising the box just about to its full height. But for normal spreader operation, halfway up is usually enough. Make sure the spinner and auger respond to changes in the control settings. Keep the spreader chute clear of large chunks of material that could block the flow to the spinner. But never stick your hand in there when the auger is turning or while the engine is running. It's too easy to get a glove or sleeve caught on the rotating shaft. Okay, it looks like everything is ready to go. But what about you? Do you have all the supplies you need to ensure your safety and comfort? You should consider bringing along at least the following: a shovel, a tow rope or chain, tools such as an adjustable wrench, vice grips and hammer, a flashlight, a repaired chain link, a fire extinguisher, flares or reflectors, and something to eat. You might be out there a long time. In addition, you should dress in warm, layered clothing, just in case you have to get out of the cab. And because you may be on the road for a while, don't leave the yard without a full tank of fuel. During your shift, pay attention to how the truck and the spreader are working. Listen and feel for unusual noises and vibrations. You don't have to be a mechanic to know when something's not working just right. And make sure your radio is turned on and working correctly. It may be the only way to contact help if you need it. When you're back at the yard for another load, take a few minutes to walk around the truck and look for any damage that may have occurred during your last patrol. Clean off dirty lights and warning signs. Remember, they're the only traffic control devices you have. And if necessary, fuel up again. Fuel the truck up, too. After the storm and after the roads have been cleared, there's more preventive maintenance. Salt and abrasives have to be washed out of the box and spreader. Hose down the truck's body and chassis. Salt is a corrosive material, and if you leave it on the truck, it can eat through metal parts and corrode electrical wiring. Lubricate the spreader again so it'll be ready to go next time. And report any equipment problems to your supervisor so they can be taken care of before the next shift. As you can see, daily checks on a truck, plow, and spreader start before the storm and continue throughout the storm. Even after the storm, there's more work to do. But doing the daily checks is an important part of our overall snow and ice control program. Equipment that works right and doesn't break down will help you do the job more quickly and safely. After all, the snow has to be removed, either with all the trucks or with half of them.